Hello and good morning, Alan. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. Congratulations on this new book, 2 Degrees. I mean, this is the kind of writing that it's more than just for YA readers, it's for all readers because we want this kind of adventure.
I appreciate you saying that. I hope I have readers of all ages. Thanks.
I mean, because in reality, my dad, when he read, he would always read the Western books and the books that had the action and stuff like that. And he always used to say, go to the writers that want to write, not those that are doing it as a job. Alan, I think you're one of those people that loves to write, dude.
Thanks. I do. I was writing ever since I was a kid. I've always known this is what I wanted to do. I wrote stories in grade school. I wrote in middle school. I was writing in high school. I went to the University of Tennessee to study creative writing, and I was working at it for years and years before I even got published. So, yeah, this is what I've always wanted to do. I love it.
Writing is my lifestyle. So I can agree with you when it comes to, doing it in school and stuff like that. You being a school teacher, I owe so much of my radio career to you guys because you saw that I was a writer and you said, look, okay, as long as you're in class, you don't have to take notes. If you want to write, you write, but just stay in class.
That's a great, you had great teachers then. And I had a teacher in 8th grade who taught me, who said, I don't want you to worry right now about grammar. I don't want you to worry about spelling. Like, those are obviously going to be important. But right now in 8th grade, I want you, when you turn in stories to me, to just go wild. I want you to just be creative. And it was great. And she really just let me go to town. She was one of my favorite teachers who really inspired me and encouraged me to be a creative. And then I got to 9th grade, and Mr. Norton was like, why are all your words misspelled and your grammar wrong? You have to fix this. And no, great. He was great because that's the next part, right? But I had a teacher at a young age who inspired me to be creative and to let my imagination run wild. But then as I got older, I had teachers who said, I love your imagination, but now you need to make it so that other people can read your work. He was right too. So they were both good lessons and came at just the right time for me.
Well, the subject matter of 2 Degrees is you take a subject that we're dealing with big time right now. And I mean, climate change, you had to do some research. This didn't just fall out of your writing instrument.
Right. No, this was a lot. And look, I have to do a lot of research for most of my books. A lot of my books are written in the past, set in the past. Like I've written books about World War II. I've written about refugee crises. I've written about the Holocaust. So, I didn't go through any of those things personally, thankfully. So I have to go and do research on those in the same way that I had to go and do research on climate change. But this was a very different kind of research. Usually when I'm doing something that's historical, let's take D-Day. I wrote a book called Allies. It's about D-Day. Look, D-Day has a start time. It had a middle part where we know what happened. It had an end time. It happened in one geographic place, in one region. We know everybody who was there and all the players in that story. That's manageable research. It can still take a lot of time, but where to start and where to finish. Well, climate change was so much harder.
Yeah,
it's a whole different thing. Yeah.
In 2 Degrees, I mean, you talk about the different things. I mean, there are 3 different locations here that you cover. So that even takes you even deeper into the research.
Yeah, at first my instinct was to put the global in global warming, right? I was going to tell a story of kids all over the world, had 25, 27 different story ideas. And I thought about putting them all in there as little quick short stories. But then I realized I wouldn't spend a lot of time with any of the characters. So I reined it in to 4, 5, 6 characters that I was working on. I thought about doing stories set in like Sydney, Australia for wildfires, Mumbai, India for rain bombs, like these storms that just drop a ton of water on a place. The area around Lake Chad in northeastern Nigeria and southern Chad, where the lake is drying up and they're having desertification. The land is turning into desert. In like Guatemala or Honduras down in Central America, where they've had just that 1 degree of temperature rise, of Celsius temperature rise, has meant that some of their the crops that they relied on for food, the crops that they relied on to make money, those they can't grow anymore, and they're having to leave because of food scarcity. And that wasn't even covering the U.S. and Canada. And I was like, I wanted to do all these stories everywhere, but then you know what I'm saying as a writer, it's too much. It's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had to remember that my big thing I wanted to get across was the idea of climate change. What is it? Why is it happening, and what can we do about it? And I realized if I told too many stories, and if I told stories that were too far outside the experience of my main readers in North America, that I would be asking them to learn a whole lot about a new culture at a new place, and a whole lot about science. Both of those things are great, but it's a lot to do in one novel, right? So I focused in on North America, and I said, I'll make this as close to home as I can for my readers, so that the geography of it, the characters, those are touchstones. And then the new thing that they have to get used to is climate change.
Yeah. Has National Geographic or Discovery reached out to you? This seems to be so much up their alley into turning this into a miniseries of some sort.
Oh, from your lips to the TV god's ears, that would be great. They haven't yet. The book just came out October 4th, so it's brand new this year in 2022. So like it hasn't been out for very long. I do hope that somebody might pick it up and take just even one of the 3 stories in here would be great to tell in a multimedia way. I hope so. Fingers crossed.
So what came first, the Google search for information, or was it the actual storyline? And you challenged yourself, well, dude, you're gonna have to do some homework here.
Yeah, it was the idea that came first, and then I realized I was going to have to do the research for it. So, I called up my editor and I said, kids are asking me for a book on climate change, because this is where it came from. Like I had kids asking me for a book about climate change, and I said, I think I want to do it. And look, I could have done it last year. I could have done it 5 years ago, 15, 50 years ago. We've been dealing with climate change or not dealing with it, as the case may be, for a long time. And I said, this is it. I want to do it now, because I had just read an article as I was started Googling it and reading a little bit. And I saw an article that said that year, I think it was 2020 when I was first kicking this around. In 2020, during 1 month of the year, the 1/3 of Americans were involved in a FEMA level climate change related natural disaster.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, whoa. 1/3 of Americans during 1 month. And it wasn't just one big all over the United States that FEMA was responding to that were either directly caused by climate change or exacerbated by climate change. And it was like, this is something that's happening right now. Like, I don't need to tell a story of the far future. I don't need to tell a story of the beginning of the industrial era or the beginning of the environmental movement in the 70s. Like, I need to tell a story about right now here in North America where this is happening, and show kids the extent of how it's affecting other kids their age.
Wow. One of the subliminal messages in this is science. And I love the idea that you have put science in this, because there's a lot of kids that aren't getting science in school, or even in even watching TV and stuff like that. So you definitely make that a major part of this.
Yeah, I wanted to, and listen, to my first draft, as a writer, I put it all in there. I put everything in there. And so, like, I had a science info dump in there. My editor was like, this is all good and it's very important, but we got to take some of this out. So it was always a matter of balancing the story versus how much information and science I was going to put in there. But it was really important to me to get that science in there, because, look, a lot of kids read my books because they're entertaining, because they're page turners, because they're thrillers. That's my number one goal, and I love that. That's what I want. But I also want them to come away with thoughts and ideas, and I want them to be asking questions about the world when they're done with one of my books. And to do that, I needed to get some real science in there. So I try to work the science in when they're not being chased by polar bears and when they're not drowning in a hurricane. There's some moments where they can breathe, and that's when we think a little bit about the science. But it was important to me to not just say disaster picture. It's not just like raging inferno. It's also like, this is why. Here's the science behind it.
All right, Mr. Author/teacher, are you going to create a website that's going to continue educating kids? Or I should say young adults.
Well,
I'm sorry, young adults.
Well, right. I like kids too. Kids is also good, but young adults, I do love that term. So I hope that the book does a lot of that work.
Yeah.
And I continue to do, instead of a website, I continue to do monthly free virtual events with kids.
Wow.
So once a month, I do a virtual event, and everybody and anybody can join up. Classrooms, kids learning from home, wherever they are, however old they are, they can tune in. And I talk about my most recent books, but then I have a half an hour of Q&A at the end, where I hope that kids will bring their questions about climate change, their questions about 9/11 and the war in Afghanistan from my book, Ground Zero, their questions about the refugee crisis, anything, or about writing, anything that they want to ask. So I'm trying to continue to connect with the kids I'm writing for, even during the pandemic and beyond.
So where can they go for that?
So yeah, go to my website is alangratz.com, and I spell my name ALANGRATZ, alangratz.com. There's an event tab up there. Click on that, and you'll see the events that I've got booked coming up, and you can click to join. I'm often working on those like a month ahead of time, like trying to get the dates set, because I usually use a bookstore partner, somebody that I can work with in a different community and recruit a lot of kids from that area. Though, again, kids from anywhere can join in all over the world.
You make reading fun. You make writing fun. The two of them married together, and you've got future writers that are right here for you.
I hope so. I always tell kids that we need their voices. We need all these voices, and I want kids to turn into writers. It's what I wanted to do from when I was a kid, like I said.
Absolutely. Alan, you got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
I love it, man. I'd love to come back.
Excellent, man. You be brilliant today, okay?
You too.